We have invested a lot of time creating, editing, and polishing our business plan for the You Got It training company. Now is the time that we need to go through one final check as we finalize it. These steps are covered in a lot of depth in the Office 2010 Shared Features series because they really work pretty much the same way in all of our applications. But we want to be sure we repeat them here as they relate to Word and good document processes. But we'll go through them quickly with little additional explanation, as it should be a review. We've opened our You Got It business plan from the Chapter 9 Project Files folder, and now we need to start about doing all of the things that we need to do. One of those, of course, is always going to be doing a spell check. What we have to realize is that there are settings for spell check. We can find them in the backstage by clicking on File, coming down to Options, and choosing the proofing category. First off at the top is a button that says Autocorrect Options. This has to do with all the stuff that tends to happen automatically, and sometimes it drives people crazy, like people who work in legal or who write contracts, and they're always trying to do sub-paragraph C, opening parenthesis, lowercase c, closing parenthesis. As soon as they press Tab or Space or Enter, Word tries to convert it to the copyright symbol. Well, these types of things are normally good, but if they're not working the way that you want, either converting things you don't or not converting things you do, they're probably going to be found under one of these tabs: Autocorrect, Math Autocorrect, Auto Format as you type, and Auto Format. At the top of the Autocorrect tab, we have several things that generally should be left on, like capitalizing the first letters of sentences and correcting 2 initial capital letters. Correcting 2 initial caps, though, is one that I like to specifically talk about, because the name of my company is PC Keys, capital P, capital C, capital K, lowercase EYS, all one word. So, of course, when you try to type that, Word tries to correct it and only let the P be uppercase. That's not correct. So sometimes, instead of fighting with it, you should just come into exceptions. Type the word the way you want it to appear, and then it won't be a problem anymore. We can do that for initial caps, for strange uses of the first letter, like when it should never be capitalized, and then other miscellaneous corrections as well. It's simply a matter of typing it and adding it. Down at the bottom, of course, we get our typical autocorrect things, like the copyright symbol I was telling you about. And I wanted to show you fairly quickly how you can also use this for something that it wasn't really intended for. I have to type You Got It Training Company a lot, and it's just long. And unfortunately, personally, I have a problem getting training spelled right. I always transpose the A and the I. So I'm going to make a shortcut. I'd like to say that anytime I type *YTC, and I use that because I'm never going to type that normally. I don't want to use things that might be typed. Then I can tell it what to replace it with. Always make sure that what you typed is spelled correctly, because this is going to be your autocorrect feature. Then all you simply have to do is click Add, and now anytime I want to use the company name, I don't have to type the whole thing out. I can use a shortcut. You can do this with people's names or any short phrases that you use on a regular basis. So all of this is in here under autocorrect. It really is a place everybody should come to once in a while just to review what's there and possibly update the settings. The other thing I wanted to mention was that we do have not only spelling settings, but also grammar settings. By default, usually Word is set to do grammar only, meaning it will check for things like verb agreement. We can, however, choose grammar and style. And when we do that, we can go into the settings. Now don't get overwhelmed here. Here's some settings that I've already set up, the way that I like to work and the way my style guidelines say I need to. For example, I never want to use a comma before the last list item. Bacon, eggs, and juice, not bacon, eggs, and juice. I've said I don't want to check about punctuation required with quotes. And for me, I only want to include one space between a period and the start of the next sentence. These are things that you can choose based on your style and your requirements, but I think you should take a look at them. The rest of the stuff in this box can actually get very complicated. That's not that we didn't ever learn it. We learned it somewhere between 8th grade and probably senior English class, but we've probably forgotten a lot of it. Some of them are pretty self-explanatory, like do we want to check for cliches, colloquialisms, and jargon, which should not be part of technical or professional writing? What about contractions? Well, if you don't write with that style, you might disable that. If contractions are okay, if you tend to write for your audience in a very casual style, then instead of having this come up in a grammar check, you can simply disable it. For now, I'm going to leave it turned on and just suggest that we all come in here once in a while, check these settings, and when we're all done, click OK. The next part of that process, of course, is to actually run the spell check, and there are a couple of ways that we can do that with shortcut keys and everything else. Don't forget, you can always get to it from the Review tab. It's the very first button on the left-hand side under the Proofing group. We can go ahead and run that, which brings it up in its own window. And this is going to be a very kind of self-directed and easy to use, I think, spell check, because it shows us things in context. Spelling errors will show up in red, grammar errors will show up in green. So looking at You Got It is that the company is locally owned, and it wants to do R. Again, we've been through all of these before, so we're not going to run through all of them. Just know that at the bottom of this box, on the bottom left side, we can disable the grammar check if we're not interested in running that particular check at any given time. I did purposefully put some spelling errors in this document, so if you're not experienced running the spell check, or if you just want to practice, feel free to run through your practice file on your own and make the appropriate corrections. I also wanted to mention that in Office 2010, we have something called context-sensitive spell check, which means sometimes we spell a word correctly, but we accidentally type the wrong word. For example, to could be TWO, TO, or TOO, and there could be THERE, THEIR, or the contraction THEY''RE. Now those mistakes will be corrected by Word's new context-sensitive spell checker. If one was to type who owns the toy, TOY, over there, THEIR, Word would detect the mistake and suggest changing the sentence to who owns the toy over there using THERE. Brand new improvement, and it's wonderful. But it goes to my point, which is you can't just rely on the spell check. The spell check is done by a computer, and the English language is complicated, so we still need to read through this. As a matter of fact, I want you to make sure you have other people read through your documents, because we can't check our own stuff. We kind of know what it says, and our brain will play tricks on us by making it think that it's seeing what it should be seeing, even if that's not what actually is on the page. So take a look with fresh eyes. I want to show you an example of that, so I'm going to go ahead and cancel out of the spell check. And we actually happen to be right where I want to be. In the paragraph that talks about You Get It specifically falls under NICS code 611420, there are actually a couple of things in here that would not come up as part of the spell check. They are symbols that were not converted correctly to symbols. They're the dash greater than. Now true, it does look like an arrow, and it's not that it's bad or wrong to keep it in here, but it's not consistent and it's not the best way to do it. So this is an example of something that would not come up in either a spell check or a grammar check, but that we want to go ahead and find by simply reading through the document and possibly having others do it as well. I'm going to go ahead and correct these by just typing the dash greater than symbol. We'll do it for this other one as well. And that kind of finishes what we're going to talk about as far as doing a spelling and grammar check goes. One thing that a lot of people don't think about is that when they include graphics in a document, they really don't know where the graphics came from. They just use the insert option, and they really don't know the properties of those graphics. Well, I can tell you, as an amateur photographer, that a lot of times images, especially taken with digital cameras or scanners, are absolutely huge, and they bloat our documents unnecessarily. Let's go over to the bottom right side of our window and choose the Browse by Object option and select Browse by Graphic. This way we can move through our document using the double down arrows until we find an actual image. For example, the one under our website category. The reason we do this is because we have to have a picture selected in order to see our contextual tabs for picture tools. If we click here, there's a button that looks like 4 little arrows coming into the picture that's about optimizing or compressing pictures. You should do this as one of your last steps anytime you have images in your document. We want to do this for the whole document in this case. If there's been anything cropped, we want to actually take that out. Then we want to determine what resolution we want to use this at. Now what happens if something isn't appropriate already, or it's already been optimized, is it will simply say use the resolution. Normally you can see, if you actually imported this from an existing file instead of a screenshot, which is what we did, that we could optimize it for print, or screen, or email, each one progressively smaller, but also with less resolution, which means technically it has less quality. If you were going to be printing something for distribution, you would obviously want to choose that choice instead of email. But if you're emailing, size matters, and we want to make sure that that is as appropriate as possible. So as one of your last steps, go ahead and optimize all of your images. Just say OK, and you're not going to notice anything different in your document. It's just happened in the background. But you might find that your file size decreases by up to 83%, depending on how many images you have and what their original resolution was. Going through these simple techniques, as well as reading through the document yourself, sharing it with others, and possibly even going through full collaboration, where you turn on the markup, let other people add comments, and go through that type of review, are absolutely necessary with some documents. Not everything, granted, but certainly with a document as important as a business plan. We've started that process. Now we're ready to go ahead and possibly protect the document from being changed